The sun that... Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hope everyone's having a good Friday morning or whatever time it is where you are. It has been a super rainy couple days here, but it's awesome because the temperature went up and the snow melted a little bit, which means the London football team will be pushing the Prowler. And I already got my easy workout in for the day, and we are going to get started here, people. We also have a big ebook sale going on right now. The code is Table Talk. That's all one word. TABLETALK, I believe. I hope I spelled that correct. So if you want, I think it's 30% off all ebooks. I'm not quite sure. So enter that code today. I think it ends today or tomorrow. I'm not sure. Anyway, Table Talk, discount on ebooks. Let's see, anything else? I'm on a huge neurosis kick. Again, it feels like I'm always on a neurosis kick. It's a shame that they won't be playing live anymore, but I've seen them live a couple times, and by far the most impressive band I've ever seen live, and I've seen a ton of bands live. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started here. We already have a bunch of questions. So again, if you want a question answered, put it in the chat, wherever the chat is on your screen, and I'll do my best to get to it. But listen, I can't write your programs here. So anyway, let's get started, people. All right. Mr. TP Scotland says, hey, Jim, London is a huge part of your life. How did you end up there? That's really easy and simple. I was hired by Dave Tate at Elite FTS, and Elite FTS was here in London, Ohio. So he hired me, and I moved to this small town. Obviously, you probably wouldn't move here unless it was for a job. It's a very small town. Nothing wrong with the town. It's just there's not a lot of stuff going on here unless you have a job. So, yeah, I ended up moving here in 2003, and I never thought I'd ever end up in London, Ohio. Didn't even know it existed, but here I am today. Super happy. It's obviously, when I first moved here, it was kind of boring. I mean, I'd have to go into Columbus to go see shows and stuff like that, but as you get older and you don't want to do as much, and you just want to hang out and do your own thing, it's a great place to live. All right, TP Scotland goes on to say, training-wise, my bench press sucks. Movement doesn't feel solid. Any basic pointers on movement, setup, or good resources to read on it? Listen, there's probably a billion things online right now. And the thing that I would recommend is all that setup and stuff didn't really start feeling good until I started adding muscle to my upper back and my lats. So that was number one, was you got to build that thick, big old back and upper back to rest on, so you never really flatten out. I guess you can't really see that, but so you don't really want to flatten out, obviously. You want to keep your feet rooted into the ground. I see way too many people. I see it all the time in the weight room. I call it Taekwondo bench press, when their legs kick up. So I think number one is you got to have to start getting a little bigger in the upper back. And then the other thing that really helped, believe it or not, was strengthening my shoulders and forearms, because that made, when I took the bar out, it made me feel a little bit stronger too. So that all kind of works together. But I always it depends on your grip and stuff like that, where you're going to set up on but the closer your grip, the more upper back, the wider your grip, the more lat you're going to kind of feel. And the bar is going to hit on your chest and stuff like that. But the other thing is when we really started working our setup, that setup was done from the barbell all the way through our top sets. So we didn't just take the bar off and do some reps. Everything was done perfect. Same thing when we were squatting, and basically any lift that we were doing. The warm-up sets were not just warm-up sets. They were perfecting the technique and our setup. So that's the other thing. But man, it took me a long time to kind of figure out where I was with the setup on the bench press. And a lot of the stuff that I ended up doing, maybe wasn't textbook, but it felt right for me. So you're going to have to test out different things and kind of see where you're at. You know, a lot of the big arches never felt really good. I felt very unstable. At the same time, you still need a big arch in your back or some kind of arch in your back. But anyway, build some muscle in your upper body. It's going to take some time, guys. You know, every big bench presser I see looks like they bench big weights. There's very few guys that are, you know, very, very skinny and lack muscle mass that can actually bench press anything big. Now, there's always that couple guys here and there, but for the most part, you're going to have to build that back and obviously build, you know, the pressing muscles, the shoulders, chest, and triceps and stuff like that. So TP Scotland says also, thanks for everything. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, TP. Trevor Trimble says, what are the biggest numbers you know of that someone totaled using by 531? I have no idea. I don't really know everyone that's used the program. So I'm sure some people have used it with great success. But understand the guys that are hitting the big numbers aren't really doing any one program. It's really not how it works. Even when you went up to when I was training at Westside Barbell, everyone's doing something a little bit different because they're an advanced lifter and they're changing and tweaking stuff like that. So the main thing about the 531 program is, you know, kind of why, and I've discussed this many times, is it gave you an exact plan of what to do when you're in the weight room. Once you start hitting the big numbers, you might have a general plan, but things start moving and shaking in different ways based on your being an advanced lifter. That's just what it does. So I'm sure there's some freaks out there that have lifted some big numbers, but they're everywhere. So anyway, all right, here we go. How important is it to keep a super flat back when deadlifting? I mean, everyone's going to have a little bit of different bow in their back. Some people can round their back a little bit. I think since I've been at London, we've had, I don't know how many hundreds of athletes have come through here, but I think I've seen only 2 kids that had kind of a rounded style back deadlifting. But they are able to maintain just, and it's not like they're candy caning, but just a little bit around. But that's very, very rare. So I think it's important to keep your back strong. And what I mean by that is stable throughout the entire movement. So when you start, wherever you start the lift with your back, you should maintain that until obviously your lockout. And it says, is it normal to have a slight bend in the upper back? Again, this is, you know, kind of depends on your body structure and your arm length and stuff like that, and your hip height. Some people can deadlift very well with a very big chest and locked in upper back. Other people, they're rounded a little bit. So, man, listen, everyone's going to have based on what their body looks like and their strengths and weaknesses, everyone's going to have a little different technique. But generally, your back should remain stable and strong throughout the movement. So if your back, you know, once you start pulling, your back starts rounding or moving in a certain way, that's probably not a good thing. Goes on to say how much direct bicep and tricep work should be done per week for growth. I'm probably the wrong person to ask since I've done very little direct bicep work in my life. And I don't have very big arms. But generally speaking, we would do tricep work twice a week. And I usually, when I was powerlifting, obviously, not when I was just lifting for football, but our tricep work, I generally divided up into 2 categories. One was what I call lockout strength. So it really wasn't about triceps. It was about working the lockout. And that's a little different than tricep work. And then that would be very high intensity, low volume. So that would be like board presses, for example, and stuff like that. You know, 3, 4, 5 board press. And that was done specifically not just to lift the most weight, but to improve the lockout. So it's a little bit of a difference there. And then the other tricep work was like more bodybuilding-esque, which was more dumbbell tricep extensions, push down, stuff like that, where you're just kind of pumping up the triceps. And obviously there's other things that you can do in there, but you know, you're also doing a lot of pressing work, especially if you're doing a lot of dumbbell pressing, which really gets the triceps. So I'd probably say maybe twice a week for both. And, everyone's going to be a little bit different. But again, I don't know much about the biceps, as I'm sure people have. Well, if you've looked, I don't have very big biceps. Most of my bicep work was rows and a lot of weighted and body weight chin-ups. Albert Klahesi says, hey, Jim, thanks for doing these. In regards to glute ham raises, did you find much crossover to help with your squat and deadlift? The answer is yes. Was there an amount of reps you used to shoot for at your strongest? I think for about, maybe 4 or 5 years, somewhere in that range. Maybe, I don't know. We were probably doing about 300 to 400 a week. So we'd start every workout out with glute ham raises and some ab work. And then we'd also end each workout with some glute ham raises and ab work. It really wasn't done high intensity. Maybe sets of 10, sets of 15, a couple sets, usually 3 sets, I think, somewhere in there. And I did a lot of high volume stuff with the glute ham raise as far as just total amount of work. I didn't really feel like I got much out of loading the glute ham raise. And I think part of that is, you do all kinds of barbell lifts, with your max effort work, dynamic squat work, all that other stuff, or any kind of deadlifting you're doing. I like my assistance work to be a little higher volume and a little less stressful overall to the body. And glute ham raises, back raises, reverse hypers, belt squats, stuff like that seem to take a lot of the pressure off the body and let me recover a little bit and let you kind of jack up the volume. But yes, now at that time, I think I started doing glute ham raises maybe my last year or two in college, and I was horrible at them. But as soon as I got better at them, that and good mornings really helped my deadlift and really helped my squat too. And when I was playing football, I felt it helped my running quite a bit. So I don't know if you need to do that many. I think I kind of went overboard with that stuff, but I had to make up for a lot of lost time. That's the kind of way I looked at it. So, John Donovan. Well, hello, John. What brand of briefs would you recommend for light hip support and warmth? John, I am so far out of the game. I'm sure there is a ton of good companies out there that make light briefs, so to speak, that are made, not for powerlifting, but for just kind of general training. And I have no idea about that. If someone maybe can chime in the chat here, and if they have like a light pair of briefs, but I am very, very ignorant on that stuff right now. So, but yeah, if your hips need it, just like if you need knee sleeves or elbow sleeves or anything like that, if you need to wear that stuff, maybe not just because you have an injury, but you can feel something coming on, and those really help you, especially if you're an older dude. Wear them, all right? You don't get, points, cool points by being injured. So you do what you have to do the movements and to protect yourself. So don't get all weird about being raw dog and all that other shit. Wear what you have to wear to keep your body healthy. Because once you get hurt, man, it's a tough road back. Julian says, hey, Jim, do you suggest to start with the original 5-1 or beyond 5-1, or, basically what to start with? I would recommend, this, of course, I don't know where you are in your training. So obviously, if you don't know what you're doing and stuff like that, it depends on where you're at. But if you're fairly, know something about lifting, I always tell people just go with the original 5-1. Do the main lift of the day, try and set a PR, keep your training max very, very reasonable. Start very light, work up, and, hit maybe 2 to 4 assistance lifts after that. And I think you'd be good to go. I think you get a lot out of the original program. I still use it with our kids. I think it turns what it really does, I think, especially if you follow the principles, it helps you build a good base and it helps you remain competitive and gives you real world or real time Answers to how you're doing. And it allows you to take, if you use the correct training mix, you can have a bad day, you can have a good day, and you can keep on kind of plugging through. So that's what I would probably recommend. Okay. Broken Tree Music says, hey, Jim, thoughts on Slayer's Repentless album? I've only seen the trilogy videos, which you recommend. I don't actually have the album. And as usual, he asked again, what about Jeff Hanneman's riffs on the album? Obviously, Jeff Hanneman was a tremendous, not just a riff writer, he's a great songwriter. And most of Slayer's most popular and best songs are really written by Jeff Hanneman, even though Kerry King had that awesome nail forearm thing that I used to love. That was back in the day. So again, I'm not terribly familiar with a lot of Slayer's newer stuff. But the 3 videos that I saw and the 3 songs were really good. But man, I'm still listening to all the old stuff and I still get a lot of joy. It's hard to listen to when there's so much music out there. I just stopped collecting it because I just wanted to listen to the stuff that I had. As you can see, I'm still stuck in the mayhem past too. Okay. You can tell I'm getting old because I'm like that. Black metal in the 90s, that's where it peaked. So, all right. Zach says, hey, do you use your assault bike for just warming up or do you incorporate it with your Walrus workouts? I do both. So obviously, like today, I just used it as a easy 20 minutes, or you can put it as part of your circuit. Or if you're still doing a lot of the main lifts, you can do the main lifts, especially in the wintertime if you have access to the Aerodyne or assault bike. You can use it as part of your conditioning circuit for your assistance. So yes, I use it for both. And I love it. I hate the assault bike for long periods of time. Like I hate doing anything more than 5 minutes. It just hurts my ass and has nothing to do with the effort. I can give the effort. It's just incredibly uncomfortable for me. And I've taken steps to try to make it easier and it just always feels like crap. So I'd rather do it in short intervals and do it for a longer period of time. I guess the best way to say it, as far as a big part of the workout. So I think it's good for both. Jeff Mulla says, hey, Jim, I got a Prowler coming in this weekend. I want to push conditioning and take a break from heavy lifting for a bit. Advice on how to balance lifting and conditioning with working a full-time labor job. Well, it depends on, kind of what you're doing. I would probably, Jeff, if I were you, I would probably steer you towards the article I wrote on the jimwendler.com website. It's called, I always recommend this, Training Advice for the Busy or Inconsistent Men, and following that basic template, because it gives you a lot of options. And you can, so if you have a lot of time or a little time, or if you're training, sometimes you can train Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Other times you can train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. It allows you to do so. So I'd recommend looking at that. And if you've got a Prowler coming and you're not used to the Prowler, I'd probably, the first maybe 3 weeks or so, try to do it twice a week and start very light. Don't run yourselves into the ground. Start just with the empty Prowler, just see how it feels on whatever surface you're pushing it on. And I'd say maybe 10 pushes or so, somewhere in there. Don't, maybe 20 to 40 yards. Again, I don't know what you have access to. And if you need to add some weight as the workout goes along. But the one thing with the Prowler is if you start kind of heavy and start going nuts, you're going to get your ass kicked. And it's not fun. You're going to get dizzy, and the rest of the day is going to be just a blur. So be smart about that. So I would probably say twice a week, 10 sprints, starting very light, between 20 and 40 yards. And don't kill yourself with the rest periods in the beginning. And once you kind of get the hang of it and see what the weight is, that is kind of the best, for you to push it fast without having to, you're basically grinding to a halt. That doesn't mean you can't do that occasionally. Add some heavier weight and just kind of walk it as much as you can. but you'll kind of get a feel for what weight you can do. Now, the weight's going to change from person to person based on the surface. And even sometimes the surface was going to change, even if you, like I always push it out in the street here. There's days a plate, a 45-pound plate and a 25 on each side is an absolute grind. There's other days I've been out there where 3 plates per side, 3 45-pound plates just glides right over. So just use that, just understand that things will probably change from day to day based on the weather, based on, you know, hell, when a street cleaner comes by here, that thing glides like you wouldn't believe. So if it's raining out, if it's raining out and we push on the field, the turf at London, it just glides right over. When it's raining out here, it is a bitch, and it sticks and sticks and sticks. So again, just be ready to change things up, okay? Just base it on kind of how you feel and what the surface is like. Jacob B says, if I'm struggling with knee pain, what substitutions would be best for squat day? Okay, so it depends on what you have access to, and you know, if you have knee pain, you know, the first thing I recommend is just avoiding things that cause you to knee pain. And then second would be to get some kind of knee sleeves, because that kind of helps a little bit. And I keep those knee sleeves on. So it's, you know, maybe once your knees feel better, don't just take them off. Use them for the rest of the time that you're training. And you know, just either you can cut out the squat, or again, if you have access to a Prowler or a sled, dragging a sled forward and back usually is much easier on your knees. You can go as heavy or as light as you want, but I would probably recommend that in favor of using a barbell, because even if you front squatted or dumbbell squatted and stuff like that, it's still squatting, and it still will probably upset your knees. So I would recommend a sled in place of it. And then he goes on and says, does Jacob, would 2 upper body days and 1 lower body day be a good program? Yes. I wrote something that's kind of based on the Washed Up Meatheads program that Joe DeFranco. So on Monday, for example, you'd bench press. On Wednesday, you'd alternate the deadlift and the squat, or just pick one that you want to do. And then on Fridays, you'd press. And then obviously you do assistance on each day based on what you want to do. And I think that's really good for people, especially for older lifters, or if someone who's got a ton of stuff going on and they just can't recover. I think it's really good if you're doing another activity, you know, like a sporting activity, and you know, you need to recover better. I think that's an awesome way to train. So again, bench on Monday. Wednesday is squat or deadlift. You can alternate every other week, or you can just pick one. You can obviously pick a trap bar or anything like that. And then on Friday, you could press. And then again, you're doing assistance on all 3 days, however you want to do it. So yes, I think that would be a good thing. And that might be great for you, Jacob, to give your knee a rest. So Jesse, hello, Jesse. He says, any new music in your playlist? Not really. Again, we already kind of talked about this. I've just been on a Neurosis kick lately. Oh, I love Neurosis. It's a shame they won't be playing live anymore, but I'm super happy I did get to see them live a couple times. And then Jesse goes on and says, I heard the High on Fire has a new album coming out soon. I haven't heard that, but I've not really been keeping up on the music gossip, so to speak. So, but they usually always come out with something that's just insane. Yeah, I've seen High on Fire a bunch of times live, and I got to see Sleep live. Ooh, was that a loud show? But yeah, I mean, the one thing with High on Fire is it sounds like High on Fire, and that's a good thing. You know what you're going to get. Tom Lovell says, or Lavelle says, hey, Jim, I'm 37 years old with a full-time physical job. I'm training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 3 times a week. Not a lot of energy left for extra training and conditioning. What would you recommend? Then he goes on and asks, do you think some moderate Walrus is an option? Yes, that can be an option. So you could do that, for example, 2, 3, or 4 days a week. Just based on your readiness and preparedness. Or like I recommended, you can go to the website, the jimwendler.com website. There's training for busy and inconsistent men. That might fit the bill and allow you to train in such a way that you can make decisions based on how you feel, especially if you're training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 3 times a week. I know that can take a strain on your body. So the other thing is when you train, like you're not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but when you're lifting and stuff, make sure that you train with a long-term approach in mind, meaning if you feel really good, just understand there's going to be a consequence if you feel really good and just slam yourself into the ground. It doesn't mean you don't train hard, but when you feel good in your lifting, you should still leave the weight room feeling okay. You shouldn't feel just horrible. So just remember that, especially I'm telling you, like when you're training, because if you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 3 or more times a week, your lifting is kind of in-season-esque. And the one thing is our in-season training at London is very compact. It only lasts maybe 35 minutes, and we get a lot of stuff done, but we're never killing the kids. And we always have the end goal in mind, which is to become a better athlete, and that we perform on Friday. So sometimes our workouts are very, very easy and light because that's what the kids have to do to be ready. Other times they train pretty hard. So be ready to make some changes. And don't just be a slave to what you're supposed to do on a piece of paper, guys. Man, I can't tell you that enough, especially with in-season or older lifters. Okay, Powell or Powie, I can't see that. Says, hey, Jim, I'm following your 5-through-1 Boing but big for next month. I have to drop the squats. I've got some swelling on it. I'm guessing your knee. No pain, though. Do you recommend some modifications in the program? Shall I keep deadlift day? Well, it depends on if deadlifts, if it hurts your knees. If it, swells up your knees and stuff and your knees hurt or whatever, I would probably ditch the deadlift day. However, if I were you, at this point, I'd try to keep the deadlift day in, and instead of doing the 5 sets of 10 on the Boing but big workout on your deadlift day, I'd just drop it to 5 sets of 5 on deadlift day and keep the strain to a minimum. That's what I would recommend. And at this time, I would probably raise up your abdominal and low back work and really just focus on bringing those things up, might as well do something while you can. And so keep the deadlift in as it is, raise up your abdominal and low back work, and just have a good time with your upper body until your knee swelling goes down. Jefferson Lee. Boy, Jefferson, I assume you're from the South, huh? That is a Southern name. It says, what is the biggest lesson you learned from Louie Simmons? The biggest lesson, there's not just really one lesson, but the real big thing with Louie, and I can, probably fill a book up with little things I've learned from Louie, is his big thing when you take a step back was just doing what you needed to do, training optimally instead of maximally. And sometimes you needed to train maximal. That was what was optimal for you. And I think the other thing I learned from Louie is the importance of assistance work. I learned that early on, that I kind of forgot it, and now I see the importance of it. So we always kept the barbell work fairly moderate or low, just compared to like bodybuilders and what most people do, I should say. And then we really built up our GPP and all that other good stuff, our hypertrophy and a lot of strength work with assistance work. And I think that's probably what's best over a long period of time. I really do. I use it with our kids. I use it with myself. So that would be the big thing. The other thing that he preached a lot was bar speed and the perfection of the reps. That's something that I've carried over from, how I coach today to how I train today. And the other thing is strength block, conditioning block. So that's another big thing that traditional periodization or even any kind of periodization, whether it be for powerlifting or for sports, they always break up the training into these blocks and I thought stronger, can get bigger, can get in better shape, can get more explosive all at the same time. You don't need to block off all that stuff. So that's a huge thing that Louie really brought in. And I still remember reading that quote from Louie in an interview, and I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And even though I heard that preached when I was a young kid, I never heard that preached from more advanced lifters or coaches, I should say. It was always done like, this is our hypertrophy block, this is our power block, this is when we do 10s, this is when we do 5s, stuff like that. So it was the first time I heard an advanced, more accomplished coach talk about learning to raise all abilities at once. And I think that's probably the best thing I've ever really learned, now that I think about it, is the importance of concurrent training. So, Big Wad. Johnny Wad. All right. He says, do you know Coach Dan John? I've never met Dan John. I have nothing but good things to say from the things that I've read and the videos I've watched. I think he's done an amazing job. And I love that he comes from a thrower's background, because that's kind of how I learned, was through some of the old time throwers and how they trained. So I think it's really cool. I think that's obviously how he learned too. Yeah, so I have nothing but admiration, and plus he doesn't swear, and he's probably a pretty good dude. And that seems, I can't stop swearing, man. It's crazy. My wife asked me. I basically grew up and never had to. Grew up in locker rooms, grew up in weight rooms, and things were always. I've never really worked in a professional environment. So it just seems like I've been hanging around teenagers, it feels like, even if they were not teenagers. And that really probably hasn't done me hasn't worked for me very well professionally, if I'm going to be honest. But what are you going to do? Khan Vadaz says, could I do boring but big at 70% all the time? Probably not. There's no forever workouts, people. There's no forever templates. There's no forever assistance work. There's not just one assistance thing or one main lift you should do. I would not recommend that. And I would get that out of your head right now. Understand that everything's going to evolve. And sometimes 70% is going to knock you on your ass. And sometimes you don't need to be doing boring but big. So it doesn't mean you can't do it for 6 weeks and give it a shot and make that a challenge. But just get that out of your head, guys. There's no forever programs. There's no forever templates. Everyone wants, like, I just want to do this workout, A, B, and C. Can I just do that for the rest of my life? I used to do that when I was a kid, and it just doesn't work like that. You're going to have to constantly evolve and change as your body changes. So, Space Battleship Alex says, let's see here. Hey, what are your thoughts on repeating a particular week until a certain rep range is reached? For instance, if a lifter wanted to get 10 reps on 5s week, but only got 7, they continue the 5s the following squat session, maybe more, until they successfully get 10 good reps. So if I were you, Space Battleship Alex, I would not repeat the week. I would repeat the cycle until you've reached the goals for each week. Okay, that's what basically we do at London. And you have to show competency at all the weeks or all the weights for a lifter or an athlete to move on. So I don't think you should just repeat the week. I think you need a little more variety in your weights. And I think it would kind of bore you to death a little bit, if I'm going to be honest. So I think your thinking is correct, but I think you still need a little more variety in your weights. And remember, guys, they always talk about, like, you need to change things up and stuff like that. And yes, you do need to change things, but sometimes the change can be just simply weight on the bar. And so you don't want to just keep on doing the same weight all the time. Now, that may work for a little bit. It may work for very young lifters. I've seen it work with my youngest son, but eventually you're going to have to start changing some things up. And I also think you might, let's say you have you only got 7 reps on your 5s week. And let's say you get to your 5-3-1 week and the weight is, much heavier and you smoke 10. I think mentally that's going to help you come back to that 5s week. And you take advantage of that kind of the mental strength and that the obviously physical strength that you gain, stuff like that. But I think that will set you up a little bit better rather than feeling like, oh, I only got 7, and you kind of get in a mental rut a little bit. So that's what I would say. So Alex here has 2 X's in front of and in the back of his name. So it's XX Alex XX. Says, Jim, the Wendler Classic twice per week. Can I just do a Widowmaker set after the plus set instead of doing FSL 3 sets of 5? You can, but just understand that the Widowmaker set's going to take something out of you. And so just that doesn't mean you can't sometimes do it, but if I were you, I would take the option. So if you're feeling really good, just go ahead and do the Widowmaker set. If you're feeling like dog shit, just do the 3 sets of 5 and move on. Khan Vidal says, do you use 5-3-1 yourself? If so, what variation? I almost always did. I just train with the weight vest right now, the Walrus stuff. But when I trained 5-3-1 for, God, I don't know how long it was, but I just did the base program, basically, the original program. I always got a lot out of it. I liked having the pressure of the PR sets. I did boring but big a little bit on. I've talked about this. We did a little bit in college before even 5-3-1. But I think by the time I really figured out boring but big and stuff like that, for example, it wasn't effective for me because of the inter and intramuscular coordination. I've talked about this in the book, the Forever book. And it made me weaker, if I'm going to be honest. And when you're a super fast lifter, and that's one of the things that when I was training at Westside and training for football, even before I was there, that high rep barbell stuff really tanked me. I was really bad at it, and it didn't work very well for me by the time that I was really kind of doing that. So anyway, but so I think I started using the 5-3-1 program about 2 years before the book was published. So I really kind of played around with certain stuff. And it's a real good reflection of how I trained in high school and through college. I just didn't have a set program, if that makes sense. So I was able to kind of consolidate a lot of the stuff that I want to do and give everyone kind of a look at the sheet, just go do your work program. That's what I wanted for myself. So as I always like to say, just give me a program and I'll give you the attitude and effort. And I wanted something that kind of reflected that. So, all right. John Diamond says, when will we colonize the moon? Let someone else do that. Someone else can live on space. No, thank you. Too many things can go wrong. Zach Evanesh, hello, buddy. I hope things are well. Hope you're doing awesome. And all right, here we go. It's okay. We still got a lot of time here. We're good. We're good. So Raymond Gerardo says, in conventional deadlift, my 95% set was 2 raw plus 2 with straps. How should I determine if I need to drop the training max? I am in a deload week next. Thanks. Generally speaking, you should be able to get 5 good reps on your 5-3-1 week. That's what we use. Well, we actually use a little higher, but that's what I would recommend. And if he goes on to say that his double overhand grip failed. So, using both straps and unstraps for the same set, you got to use one or the other, man. That's what I would recommend. So if I were you, maybe your first 2 sets, just go double overhand. And then your PR sets, I would just go use the straps. And if you want to use a double overhand, this is going to sound a little crazy. So again, you do your first 2 sets. For example, on the 3x3 week, you use 70% double overhand, 80% double overhand, 90% use straps, take a break, and then do a double overhand set all out again without straps. So, but listen, you can't be mixing and matching that stuff, and it's hard to get a good idea of where you're at. So either drop the training max so you're getting 5 reps on that final set on the 5 through 1 week, or just do what I just said and just commit to it. Jay Boyfly says, what do you think about plyo push-ups? I had a couple kids use these, and we're kind of doing some different stuff with landing and holding positions, so I'm not completely sold. I think push-ups are awesome. I don't think everyone's ready for plyo push-ups. I think I see a lot of people doing plyo push-ups, and I think they're kind of using their entire body and kind of doing the worm to get to clap their hands or to get out of a box. So I don't think a lot of people are prepared for it, but I think they're an awesome way to train if you can do them. I just don't know enough about programming them and exactly where what we're looking to hold and absorbing the energy after you clap and hold. But whatever you do, just remember it's not an endurance exercise. It's explosive movement. So keep your reps low. Make sure you're resting enough. Shouldn't be part of like shouldn't be part of like a assistance, metabolic circuit or anything like that. So they can be used, but again, we never really used them at Westside, but I can definitely see how they can be good for some people. Khan says, when or how often do you think I should change the 5 through 1 variations, or is it whenever I feel like? Well, if something's working, just go. If so, keep on doing it until it doesn't work. That's number one. So, if you go to a gas station and every time you buy a lottery ticket at that gas station, you win the lottery, keep going to that gas station. All right. Don't go somewhere else. So if something's working, use it. In general, I would probably say you can stay. Other than that, it depends on the 5 through 1 variation. If it's incredibly difficult and hard, I'd say no more than 2 cycles. But generally speaking, I'd say 2 to 3 cycles for most variations. And there's obviously some wiggle room there. So again, if it's working, just keep on running it. Don't worry about why. Don't worry about all that other stuff. If your lifts are going up, stay where you're at. Keep up milking that program for what it's worth. Other than that, 2 to 3 cycles. There we go. Look at that. Tanner says, hey, have you thought about writing a book on your experience and advice for high school athletes? Yes. He goes on to say, I've really enjoyed the insights you've shared with Dave on his Table Talk podcast. Well, thank you, Tanner. I've definitely thought about that. The hard thing with high school athletes is you have such a massive variety of athletes that come into your charge, so to speak. You have kids who are amazing athletes who could jump and run and do all this other stuff. I've had a kid come in as an 8th grader and deadlift 315 like it was nothing. I've had kids who can't even lift the barbell. And so there's so much stuff going on. And a lot of that knowledge that you get, you can't really put it into a system and put it on paper. I know everyone wants that, but it doesn't work like that. That's why when you're a coach, you have to be well-rounded and have a lot of experience. And you have to know what you're looking at. And I'm not trying to get out of this, but there is a tremendous amount of art, so to speak, when you're coaching a large group of athletes. And I think that's a very difficult thing to do. It's taken me a long time to get really good at that, and I'm still learning everything. The problem that I would have, though, is a lot of people, and I talk to coaches all the time. I have coaches that I work with who talk to other coaches about what we do, and a lot of people don't believe what we do. I know I'm not doing that as a ego boost, but I think a lot of people are surprised at how little we do on a daily basis And I think they think we're leaving stuff out because I read about this on the forum. I keep a training log for our team on the forum, on the jimwendler.com forum. I think, though, the number one thing that I would tell people is raise all abilities. Remember, we talked about what Louie has really preached. And we are amazingly consistent. We're consistent from a young age. We have a junior high program that my wife runs. So when I say consistent, I mean year round. We don't take weeks off. We don't, if a kid's playing a sport and he plays on the football team, he's expected to lift. So our consistency allows us to be slower and more methodical with our training. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I'm not in a rush to load my athletes with a super heavy weight, and watch them squirm and do all that other crap. So we can lift very conservatively, and we can lift because we lift so consistently is the best way to say it. So we don't do what I call social media lifting in the weight room. We do real lifting, which means not every day is to be posted on YouTube or Instagram. We're not doing insane challenges every day and stuff like that. And yes, I've thought about it, but I couldn't imagine the amount of work that would go into it because it's not just do X, Y, and Z. I guess I could do that, like just share exactly how we do a year, but there's so much little stuff in there. We have so many different kids that, this might be the base program, but I might have 6 kids like, listen, man, you can't really do this very well. So what we're going to do is we're going to tweak this here and here. And even within there, I look at it and I'm like, all right, out of those 6 kids, this kid, like, we're going to have to do something a little bit different until you get where you need to be. So, and it's hard to do. And man, did I screw up, and I continue to screw up all the time. So, John Leshner says, I'm planning to try boring but big. Is it necessary to do hamstring work for an accessory? No. But I do recommend doing abdominal work. His background is in ice hockey with back and hip issues until hip surgery a few years ago makes me cautious about leaving hams out. Well, listen, it's not John Lesnar, it's Johan. Johan, if that's what you need to do, then do it. So yes, if that's what you need to do to stay healthy with your back and hip issues, then always keep that exercise in. Again, it doesn't have to be crazy, as you probably well know, but just go ahead and do it, man. So yes, for you, I would definitely recommend doing the hamstring work and just being cautious with the volume. So if some days, something in your back or hip doesn't feel good, then go ahead and cut it out for that day. Come back to win. All right. You don't have to, you're not just training for the day, you're training for the lifetime. All right. All right. Double X Alex is back. He says, I'm currently doing the 2 times per week Wendler Classic, and I'm like 3 times skateboarding per week. Because of all the rotational movement impact while skateboarding, would you recommend assistance work for this? No. You're fine. Just skateboard and lift weights. You'll be all right. You don't need to do any SBP at this point in your life. All right? Good to go. Johan Leshner says, oh, he's back. I wonder about the same question if I would exchange deadlifts for front squats and if that would be a good way to prioritize improving my squat. Thanks for being real. Well, I appreciate it, Johan. Greetings from Sweden. All right. All right, Johan. So, listen, if you feel that doing front squats is going to improve your squat for whatever reason, then yes, you can go ahead and exchange the deadlifts for front squats. But understand, just doing more stuff isn't always the answer. Sometimes the answer is doing the things that you already do and doing them better. And there's nothing wrong. Like if you bring up your deadlift and bring up your strength in the deadlift, it will help your squat. All right. So don't just think you got a squat to raise the squat and then do more squats, which is fine for a while. But I'd much rather have people do what they do and just do what they do and do it better. Make sure the reps are cleaner. Make sure the reps are faster. Make sure you're under control on the way down and exploding. Everyone wants to just pound, 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 when I'd rather you just do things better. So again, doesn't mean you can't do it. It may help you out. It may be what you're looking for, but understand that better is always better, not more is always better. All right. Eric writes, hey, Jim, when you are doing Walrus training, do you have a goal rep number to reach in the workout, or do you go for a certain amount of time and as many reps as possible? No, I have a goal rep number to reach. So I don't really do it for time or for as many reps as possible. No. So I always have, like, listen, this workout I'm doing 500 squats and 300 push-ups. So I don't just let the clock run and hope for the best. But even within there, I'll be honest, there's some days like I start training and some days, man, I am just feeling like absolute dog shit. And I'll just, if I don't feel like I can really power through it without some consequences, I will, back off a little bit and live the fight another day. So, but yeah, the basic answer is yes, I do have a goal number each time. Howie says, which template of 5-through-1 will you recommend, or would you recommend if I want to cut some calories and lose some body fat? I would recommend the original 5-through-1. I would recommend cutting the daily calories by a very small amount and losing body fat and all that stuff very slowly, and doing so that you maintain and gain some strength. That's what I would recommend. If you cut your calories too quick in an effort to lose weight, everything's going to take a dump on you and you're going to feel horrible. Your energy is going to go low. Your strength's going to go low. You're going to feel like crap. And no one wins. So if your goal is to lose weight, I give yourself 12 months and be very conservative with cutting your calories, unless, of course, you're morbidly obese or something like that and you're going to die. So the slower that you lose your fat, the more muscle you'll be able to maintain, and your strength can at least maintain or get better. So that's what I would recommend. Robert says, should an older lifter using lower weight for lower reps still do PR sets? I think if you're an older lifter, your PR sets will probably have to be fewer and farther in between, depending on the effect on your body. Just because you're older doesn't mean you can't do it, but if it's starting to take a toll on your body, I would use the advanced lifting thing, and I just wrote something on the forum that's kind of been a big hit. Vincent DeCenzo has used it. I think he wrote an article about that on Elite FTS. And then, so when you do PR sets, maybe, I don't know, you'd have to kind of see where you're at. So maybe once a cycle, you can do 1 or 2 sets, maybe one for the squat, one for the deadlift, just seeing how you feel. So yeah, you can still do it, and I still think PR sets are awesome. I just think you can't do them all the time. So yes, I still think you should do them, but minimize them. Okay, Scott. Oh boy, we gotta get moving here. Scott McDonough. I will get to all these questions. Don't worry. I'm a full-time firefighter in a busy department and looking for guidance. I've been doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday Walrus type training. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays is a mix of easy and hard conditioning. Well, Scott, if you feel good and you feel like this is helping your job and you feel like you can do your job and you don't wake up and you always feel like dog crap and you feel like you're getting better, if what you're doing is working, go for it. I cannot stress that enough. So it looks like you're on the right track is basically what I'm saying. But again, the fact that you're asking this question worries me. I don't know if you're worried you're not doing enough, or if you're feeling beat up, you may have to change some stuff. But from what I see, I think you're good to go. Okay. Khan says, could I use 5-through-1 for pull-ups, dips, and rows? I've tried different variations of that. You can go ahead and give it a shot. I've never had much success with that. And part of it is I think it's a little more difficult to do it because there's just all kinds. I've written articles about all this stuff. But if you want to try it and you want to give it a shot, man, go for it. I like to have my main lifts be the main lifts, and I like doing pull-ups, dips, and rows and stuff as assistants because I like having the creativity to change things up based on how I feel and what I want to do. I love having that. I love doing assistance work, and I love having variations and being creative with that stuff. So, okay, Big Season says, I'm having trouble at judo using my upper and lower body together to throw my opponent. Would you add power cleans or plyometrics to increase explosiveness? How or what might you add to help with this? Well, that sounds like more of a skill issue. So if I were you, if I was training you, I'd continue to train and make sure your reps were done correctly. And I see that all the time when I'm at London. And I think we would just do what you're doing, and I would, see if your reps are how I want them. So that's nice and controlled on the way up and explosive. Control on the way down, explosive on the way up. Great rep integrity, I call it. And then obviously make sure you're doing some abdominal work. It doesn't have to be fancy. Make sure you're doing a little bit of low back work. It doesn't have to be super heavy either. But listen, you can try to add power cleans or plyometrics. I don't know if I would do that just yet. Doesn't mean you can't do box jumps, but very low level plyometrics might help. But I think I would look at your overall training integrity first, and then work on your technique in judo, and make sure your coach is working with you on how to do that. So I don't know if I'm making a good sense here. Listen, if you're doing just basic lifting stuff and doing them correct, that should be okay. And the SVP needs to be the coach's deal, and he needs to be working with you on that. So, okay, Scott says, I'd like to push the conditioning and some strongman type training. Where would you add more? At the end of Walrus or start double days? Okay, this Scott was the firefighter. If you're going to do strongman stuff would be, I'd probably take out one of the Walrus days and do the strongman stuff on one day, because that's basically weightlifting. It's strength training. And then doing 2 days of the Walrus stuff. I don't know if I would do 2 a days just yet, because the strongman stuff is going to tank you. Especially if you're doing it fairly heavy like they always do. So I would take your current training program and plug one of the Walrus days, take that out and put the strongman stuff in there. How do you improve sprinting speed when athletes get bigger and stronger? I'm not sure if I understand that, because we train year round and we don't get fat, and we get stronger. And when you get stronger, our kids get faster. And we're always running year round. So we improve it by training correctly. We improve it by improving our kids' GPP, because our kids are athletes. So lifting weights and jumping and all that other stuff is general physical preparedness. We raise our general fitness levels too, with body weight stuff and stuff like that. So we improve it by getting our athletes bigger and stronger. And then running year round. It's not it's not hard to do. So you just have to be consistent with your training and raise their strength and raise their, because kids aren't gaining 70 pounds. They're not like bodybuilders or anything like that. So the kids will gain 10 pounds. As long as they're running all the time, they're going to be fine. Are there any books or resources on leadership that you found useful as a coach? The answer is no. I've never really read anything that's really helped me. The most important thing, I think, to help me as a coach is, one, getting out there and actually coaching. And number two, developing a knowledge base that makes you feel confident in what you're doing. And number three is demanding of yourself the same consistency and discipline that you demand of your players. So I think those three things are really big, but I don't know if you can really learn on books and resources, just like You can't really learn to run a business in a classroom. You have to go actually run a business in the real world to learn how to do it. So no, I don't know any books that would probably help. Doesn't mean you can't read some stuff and kind of get some inspiration and some thoughts, but I've never really read anything on that stuff. I've been coaching a long time, and that's just been my experience. So let's see here. I'm a big fan of conjugate training, but I struggle to adhere to the standard max effort, dynamic effort template. Is there a way to keep my training simple like 5-3-1, but still utilize the different bars? That I don't know, because there's a lot of different things in there. And listen, conjugate training or concurrent training, it's not really about changing exercises. It's about raising all your abilities at once. So again, I don't know if that's the current definition anymore, but that's how we learned it. But yeah, I think it'd be very difficult to do that with the different bars. So the only thing I would probably adhere to is something I wrote about on the forum, is keep the main lift 5-3-1, and then coming back around as your supplemental lift, doing an additional. So let's say you're bench pressing, you do your regular bench press 5-3-1, and then you would do your floor press, and then you would use or your 2-board press or whatever else, and using Prilipin's chart and working up to around 90% and working from there. And again, I should probably say it's not always 90%. You would just use your readiness and preparedness. So sometimes you might only feel like, hey, man, 70% is about where I need to be. And this using Prilipin's chart to guide you on your total amount of reps, the reps per set and stuff like that. So that would probably be the best way. Again, main lift 5-3-1, your supplemental work based on Prilipin's table, based on your readiness and preparedness, and I think you'd be good to go. There you go. Greetings from Poland, says Paul. Well, thank you very much, bud. I appreciate it. Big Wad says, hey, Jim, a few weeks ago, you gave me a hard conditioning idea where I did weight vest push-ups, pull-ups, squats, and sit-ups, and airdyne sprints, and it worked great. That's awesome. Love that stuff. What are your thoughts on hip thrusts for the hamstrings? I don't know. I've never really used them for the hamstrings. I always thought that was a glute exercise, but if you feel like, as an assistance lift that it's really good for you, man, go for it. That's it. The assistance work is where you can have some fun and use some variety. So if that works for you, YouTube advanced, then go ahead and knock it out of the park, buddy. I think you'd be good to go. And then he asks here, are there any thoughts about gymnastics rings? I think they are great for the people that can use them. I'd be a little hesitant personally to use dips because my shoulders hurt so bad. But if you can do them, obviously the pull-ups and the fat man rows and the dips and even push-ups, go ahead and use them, man. Good times. Big Wad. Okay, this will be our final question unless someone wants to add something. Says one final thing. Your knee sleeves work tremendously well for my cranky knees. But you don't sell elbow sleeves for my creaky elbows. Do you have a brand you recommend? I do not. I am not terribly familiar with elbow sleeves since I've never really worn them. And it seems like, man, what a pain in the ass to get those things on. Oh my God, I couldn't imagine it. But anyway, I don't really know, but I would probably recommend is I'm sure there's some really normal big time companies out there. And I would probably lean towards the ones that you see most of the time. I know that sounds like a corporate sellout kind of thing because they probably do a fairly good job. But yeah, if you need to use them, Big Wad, I'd go ahead and jump on that as soon as possible. But I can't imagine the sizing pain in the ass that would be because I know what the sizing pain in the ass for my knee sleeves are. And so that's what I would recommend. So if we got, it's past 11 o'clock. Let's see here. Well, thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you for asking all the questions. I really appreciate that. Remember, Table Talk is the code for the ebook sale. That's one word, Table Talk, for ebook sale. We have a paid forum that's, I think, $4.99 a month, jimwendler.com forums, which is awesome. It's been around for, I don't know, almost 13 years. It's an amazing place. There's a tremendous group of people, a really good community helping others out. There is no politics. There's nothing like that. It's a very positive community. A ton of people on there, a ton of coaches on there, some people from all kind of walks of life helping each other out. So if that interests you, go ahead and join up. I really appreciate that. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Let's see here. Do I have anything else going on? I don't. So you guys have a great weekend. You guys, thank you for everything. I love you. And I will see you next Friday. Bye-bye.